And welcome to Josef's Model Railway, which is exceptionally messy, and toy room. In this, let's just call it, we saw part one, now this will be our part two on Percivals landing. So you just finished seeing in the previous video, we've just put down the dirt, we've created where our paths need to go, and we just applied a little bit of static grass, and we've carved out and got started with what we need to do with this boardwalk or jetty or decking bit or whatever you want to call it. So we're going to pick it up here today, and we're going to get stuck into the next piece and see how we get on. So while all that's drying, I thought we'd come back to this boardwalk situation, and here it currently is. What I thought I'd like to do is just at the end, you would obviously have, this would be the upper landing, and it goes down to a second level and then a lower level, which would match up to where the canal is. People might be fishing, or they used to bring stuff in, who knows. But what I wanted to do is obviously just create a bit of a rope type of fencing using basically some of these little round bits of the model rod or dowel. And as you can see, here's a smaller one here that we've done. And we're just taking our small pin drill with a small bit. I can't tell you the size, but that's got to be somewhere between 1/2 to 1 mil, and it's very simple. It goes through nice and smoothly, which we'll see shortly. We just drill it in. I'm just making sure I've got the right size that I can get a needle through, because we're going to be using this type of cotton on it. It's a slightly heavier one, as you can probably see, and we'll zoom in shortly, that gives us what we need, an upholstery thread or something like that. And I may still run a bit of beeswax over it just to take some of the fuzzies off of it. But this is the approach, and we're going to zoom in now, and I'm going to show you certainly something I've learned in some of these YouTube videos about this process. And also, yes, once we've worked out the sizing of what we want, we're going to pre-drill our holes, and then we're going to leave it to soak in an ink to get it to get the right shade of color. So as you can see on our test piece here, there's plenty of room. It's going to be a lot easier to thread that needle through. I've just put a knot at the end. You can take it through, and we can do our rope as required. So let's carry on, get them cut to length, and get them weathered up. We're also probably going to do a little bit of a metal band that goes around it with some rivets. I don't know, just see what happens. Well, I've got you in close. Hopefully you can see that definition on the top there. It looks like the real thing with the grain of the timber like that. So that should work out very, very well. But let's get this measured up. So this one's cut to 1.5. While it looks like it's nearly 2, that's just the way I've got it angled in to hold it upright so we can see it. But it comes up to his elbow, and I think this will be what we're going to work with. 1.5. I also have 2 types of rod, a slightly thicker one and a thinner one. I thought we'll use the thicker one for the outsides and a middle post, and then some smaller ones there. Remember, our boardwalk is only about 11 centimeters wide, about the length of the ruler, but we also need to factor in a little walkway that would be going down on either side. But I think we've still got enough room to put 6 pylons in. Let's see what we can come up with. Well, here we go, and another myth busted, but everyone talks about using this India ink mixed with 100% isopropyl alcohol. And of course, here's another YouTube user and here's the ratio you need to use if you want to do it: 2 teaspoons to, I've forgotten now, 100 mils of the alcohol. We mix it up into a cup or something, or plastic bag, and let it sit for 2 or 3 days. Forgot to shoot the bit when I pulled it out. I'm not really happy with this India ink business, but I have pulled it out, and you can see I've left it in a glass jar in the car here. That's obviously, it's particularly hot. I'll wind the windows up and we'll get up to about 70-80 degrees in this car this afternoon, and that'll dry. Well, I was skeptical. As it's starting to dry out It's not looking as bad as I thought. I'm still not really convinced on this process, but we're going to give it a try. I think just an ordinary wash with some of the other things would have given just a practical thing, and I wouldn't have had to have waited many days for this. Still, here we go. Well, let's try and do this. We've got our cotton that we're going to use for the rope. We have the boardwalk. We've done our posts. We've got this Renaissance wax polish and some glue, our measurements, and some paper towel. Let's watch everything go wrong. First of all, I just want to say I was going to, I read some stuff with people that build model ships and things like this, and they all talk about running some sort of a beeswax or something across here, so you get rid of all those little sort of fluffy little bits of fibers from the cotton and that. This is a bigger one and there's not a lot of that, but I get the idea, and it's a bit more posable in some applications, so I thought we'd do that. The funny thing is, I also remember seeing a pot of beeswax my wife had for something. I thought that'll do, but as I read more into it, beeswax is not good because it actually has some compounds and acidic reactions that will actually break down over time. Hardly seems like the high-end project that I need to be concerned about, but I did take note, and then I came across this Renaissance wax or polish that they talk about, which is very similar, except and it goes on about the king or whatever else appointed by Her Majesty the Queen, and it's what they use in the what is it, British museums or whatever else. So it's got the seal on it, and I think a little pot like this will set you back $50-60 in Australia, and can be used sparingly, and I would dare say that this little pot will do us for the rest of my life. But let's have a bit of a play with this. Now, first of all, the logs, the footage you just saw, I tried this attempt of using this India ink way of doing it, and while the results are not bad, first attempt, and I could probably make them better, but it did a reasonable job on them, and for the time it took to soak them for a few days, I can get the same result just putting a standard wash over it, or the umber wash that I like to use from Vallejo. So this India ink option and diluting it with water, sure, maybe if you're doing big applications, it's a bang for the bucks option. I've seen so many people talk about it on channels, but I really wasn't wowed in what it did that I could have just got from a standard wash. Oh well, let's carry on. A little quick rudimentary diagram here of our boardwalk, and the whole idea is I facilitated, we're going to have the big posts here toward the end, another big one in the middle, and a couple of smaller ones with a little bit of a drop there. I also worked out that I'd leave a centimetre, and as you may be able to see from our diagram here, I basically allowed for a 1 centimetre thing on either side where you'd basically step down, and that goes down to the next landing of this boardwalk situation. The other thing I wanted to say as well is that I was going to get them in place and thread this through, and you can see this is the general idea of where we would put our posts and do this. However, I think we're going to have to pre-thread it a little bit and then fine-tune it. The reason I say it is because when they're in place, this is going to be a pain to try and work it in. So we will thread them all through, leave plenty on the end that we can fine-tune it, and then we can tie them off. But before we can do anything, of course, I need to get this product on it. And as I understand, we take a little bit, put it onto some sort of a cloth. Now I am going to use a paper towel, and I'm going to run it down. Now we remember we need to go 2 sets back, so we need at least this much. So we'd fold it back over in this much. Now I'm going to take a little bit more than that because I still want plenty to tie on the ends. Better cut it. I don't have any scissors, so I don't see why this wouldn't cut it for me. Beautiful. I'll take it. I don't mind telling you the current ambient air temperature in this room is 34.5 degrees. There's no air conditioning on at the moment. It's the middle of the night and I don't want to disturb everyone. They're comfortably sleeping with a ceiling fan on. So let's get some of this. Okay. All right. Well, now I've been rethinking about how these posts are exactly going to go. It looks like I said 3 big ones in at a centimetre. Now, that's 3 of these planks I'm coming and starting in on. Starting with the lower ones first. Joseph, does that matter? Not at all. That's just what we're doing. I like to think that wax might be giving us a slightly smoother trip through. I don't think it's doing anything of the such. I'm just hoping it'll be a little more posable when it's in place, but I can always add a bit more. And again, I'm probably overthinking it because you're really not, well, I like to think you're not really seeing a lot of this, but the actual truthful reality is that this is right where the eye's going to be. No, we're not going to fix your trousers. Thanks for asking. Home economics. What a wonderful life lesson. Okie dokies. This looks quite good. So I'm actually not going to do any more from here except for get our posts now into place. If you are using, I'm going to use this because I like the instant grab that you get. Just make sure you do shake it well before you start. Took a bit longer than normal. Try and make sure you've at least got it straight. And remember, we're going in from the 3rd one in. Same thing again. 1, 2, 3, and in. Well, look, I don't think it's all that bad. Never proclaimed it was going to be super, but it kind of gives a reasonable illusion of what I'm going to try and create going down to the next level. I'm pretty sure it must have been this Just Rust, the lighter one. I'm absolutely convinced of it because I can see there's just that slight browning to it. Just using the dry side now of the sponge, just rubbing it through, getting rid of any excess buildup, and then as you can hopefully see, like around the banding and the key bits, that's where it's coming in, bringing up that little patina color there. I really do like that. Is turning up really well, and also it takes that pure blackness off the lamp post. So this is our original one here on the end. And I think you can see it's very faint, but you can certainly see it just gives a more natural looking, almost a bronze colored effect to it, which is, by the time we come into natural light and not sort of under these lights that we're using here, this blends in much more naturally into a scene. Plus it's just got those extra bits of the coppery kind of color and things like that, and I think that just really does elevate things so much and is definitely well worth that extra piece of time. Well, as we let those lamp posts just dry for a moment here, working on the next part of our project is we've got the little concrete slabs that we created. Here they are underneath the tripod stand. Okay, here are our little so-called concrete little sections we're going to add to this to hold our lamp posts at the moment. Right, now before we can celebrate and get the pelicans on there, we better get this thing into place. Alright, well, as always, Gonna need some holes for these wires. I'm not done with the lighting after this. We've still got some more to do, but let's get this bit into place. So just before we put this into place, I wanted to have a quick chat to you about the Just Plug lighting system. Now, these two might seem awfully similar, but there is a difference. Landscape lights are basically a profile spot. So as you can see, probably by the little indication there, it's just like a little pin spot, LED, that has a nice narrow beam to shine out onto something. The landscape lights are the ones I used on our petroleum depot tankers at night. So they're just designed to give this nice gentle curve and uplight something to the side. Now, that is what I want to use here. I plan on putting a couple somewhere discreetly, not for the modeling sense of it. We're going to hide them behind something, but they'll illuminate the chippy box signage just right. Where there may be other floodlights that are using it, we're going to go on a slightly different approach. So while we've got these holes, I may well end up putting them in that location. I'm not quite sure yet, but as you can see, the usual mounting hardware we need. But as you can see, they've got a little hood on them, and I have them on the petroleum depot just mounted like this, and it shines out and about like this, which is pretty much what I want to do here. And my thinking was I was planning on sort of putting them somewhere so they almost look like trash cans or something like that. I'm not exactly sure just yet, but I also want them to be just in the right location, both to illuminate the building. You may have seen me doing this in some other videos where I thread it through my drill bit thing, and I must admit, with some of the other modeling ones, you don't get, they have a special sort of unified fitting on them. What's good about this is you can thread it through a hole, as slow going and as painful as this is, but you can actually make sure you're getting down to the size you need to fit it. Before we carry on, we better check that these lights are all working. That's good. Now, once this is initially dried, we're still going to need to come back in and fill around it as required. So if there's something that needs a bit of straightening or moving, plus we also have the upper advantage of getting something underneath the actual middle section to level it up as needed. Definitely has got the weight that it looks like it's going to need something up there. This is probably all we need to slide in here. Yeah, look at that. Okay. We're going to put it on right on the edges there. So hopefully when we slide it into position, it'll push and lock in. I want to keep a little bit of pressure, and at the same time, I don't want to overstimulate this one too much because it's just teetering on where that board's going to be.
Just add a few stones direct from the marina itself, actually.
So I think you can see as we come down to basically the eye level of what I'm looking at, working behind the light in this instance, you can see that we're starting to create something a little bit interesting. Those rocks aren't what I was planning, but I think they're not too bad. Again, it'll all start making sense as we start finishing up the scene. Now we're going to work on the fence that needs to sit across the back here, and then we can start detailing up the BMX track.
Girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, as always, I'm going to stop it here. You can forget about parts 1, 2, 3. I think there's going to be 4 or 5 parts. I've decided to shoot this ending again and just stop here with what we did with the boardwalk, because the other 2 sections, we've still got to build the rest of the BMX, and then we've got to do the final fit out. So there's going to be a few more videos on this. I do apologize, but it's just getting way too heavy in this edit at the moment. So what I've decided to do is we're just going to stop it now, and I'm going to certainly look forward to picking it back up again next week, where we're going to carry on with this delightful little journey that we're having, creating Percivals Landing. Look, thank you so much as always for joining me, and I'll look forward to seeing you in that next one. Stay safe. Toodles.